The forest moon of Valendra glowed with silver light as Lyria stood at the edge of the ancient grove and watched the sky with careful eyes. She had lived for 3 centuries, and in all that time she had seen many things, but tonight something felt different. In the air beside her stood 2 magnificent dragons who had been bonded to her soul since the day of their hatching. Ashfire was a massive red dragon whose scales gleamed like rubies in the moonlight, and whose breath could melt solid steel in seconds. Moonshadow was smaller but faster, with scales of deep midnight blue that seemed to absorb light itself and move like living shadows. Together, the 3 of them had defended this sector of space from pirates and raiders and hostile forces for over 50 years. Lyria wore armor crafted from dragon scales and blessed by the ancient magic of her people, and her violet eyes could see through darkness and illusion. She was a warrior of the highest rank among the elves, and her name was known across a dozen star systems as someone you did not want as an enemy. The peaceful night was suddenly broken by a sound that made both dragons lift their heads in alarm. A ship was falling through the atmosphere and burning as it came, and trailing smoke and fire like a dying comet. Lyria watched with interest as the vessel crashed through the canopy of massive trees and finally came to rest in a clearing half a mile away. The impact shook the ground beneath her feet and sent flocks of luminescent birds scattering into the night sky. Without hesitation, she began walking toward the crash site, with her dragons following close behind her. As a guardian of this moon, it was her duty to investigate any intrusion and determine if it posed a threat to the sacred groves. The walk took only minutes because her elven grace allowed her to move swiftly through the dense forest. When she arrived at the clearing, she saw a ship that was much smaller than she expected and badly damaged. The hull was scorched. Black in places, and panels hung loose and sparking with electrical discharge. Steam rose from ruptured cooling systems, and one of the engine pods was completely torn away. Lyria had seen many ships in her long life, but this one looked like it had been through a battle and lost badly. She approached cautiously, with one hand resting on the hilt of her enchanted blade, while her dragons spread out to flank the vessel. The airlock hissed and groaned as it tried to open and finally managed to cycle. With a sound of grinding metal, a figure stumbled out into the moonlight, and Lyria had to resist the urge to laugh at what she saw. It was a human wearing a spacesuit that was in even worse condition than the ship itself. The suit had tears along both arms and one leg, and sparks flew from exposed wiring near the chest. Plate coolant leaked from multiple ruptures and created small puddles on the ground. The helmet was cracked down the middle with a spiderweb pattern that spread across the visor. The human was limping badly and favoring his left side as he moved away from the ship. Lyria could not help herself, and a laugh escaped her lips as she stepped forward into the light. "You call that armor?" she said with amusement, clear in her voice. "My dragons. She had scales stronger than whatever metal that is." The human stopped moving and looked up at her through the cracked visor. For a moment he said nothing and simply stood there, swaying slightly, as if struggling to remain upright. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, he reached up and began removing the damaged helmet. Lyria watched with curiosity as the seal broke with another hiss of escaping air. The helmet came off to reveal a young human male with brown hair plastered to his head with sweat. His face was marked with several scars, including one that ran from his left eyebrow to his cheek. His gray eyes looked tired, but there was something in them that made Lyria pause, something that her dragons clearly noticed too, because Ashfire took a step back and rumbled low in his throat. The human looked at her and then at her dragons and then back at her without showing any fear. Most beings cowered when they first saw Ashfire and Moonshadow, but this human seemed unconcerned. He checked the identification patch on his torn suit, which read Danny Carter, and below that, maintenance technician. Lyria felt her amusement grow, because this was not even a soldier, but a simple technician who fixed things. "What brings a human so far from your little protected world?" she asked as she began to circle him slowly. "Did your ship malfunction because you did not know how to fix it properly?" Danny set the helmet down carefully and pulled an emergency pack from his belt. He opened it with practiced hands and removed a medical kit without looking away from her. "You should leave this moon," he said quietly. His voice was calm and steady, despite the obvious pain he must be feeling. "There is a Crithian war fleet 3 hours behind me, and they are not coming for a friendly visit." Lyria stopped circling and laughed again because this human clearly did not know who he was talking to. "We elves have defended these territories for thousands of years," she said with pride filling her voice. "My dragons, and I have burned entire raiding parties to ash. Whatever Crithian force is coming will meet the same fate they all do." Danny pulled out bandages and antiseptic spray and began treating a deep gash on his forearm. He did not flinch or cry out even though the wound looked painful. "This is not a raiding party," he said while he worked. "This is a full war fleet with 40 battle cruisers and weapons that can crack planets open like eggs." Lyria felt her smile fade slightly because 40 cruisers was indeed more than a simple raiding force. The Crithians usually traveled in groups of 5 or 10 ships at most when they attacked border worlds. But 40 cruisers meant this was a serious military operation with clear strategic goals. Still, her pride would not allow her to show concern in front of this weak human with his broken suit. "Then I suggest you hide in your crashed ship while real warriors handle the threat," she said dismissively. She turned to walk away and inspect the perimeter of the crash. Danny's voice stopped her mid-step. "I did not crash here by accident. He said I was the rear guard and my ship took all the hits that were meant for the civilian transports evacuating the Tertian colonies." Lyria turned back slowly and looked at him with new interest in her violet eyes. "You are a soldier?" she asked. He shook his head while finishing the bandage on his arm. "I am a maintenance tech," he said. "But someone had to buy time for the evacuation, and the soldiers were all busy protecting the transport ships directly. So you volunteered to die," Lyria said. She tried to keep the skepticism out of her voice, but it crept in anyway. "That is either very brave or very stupid." Danny started gathering pieces of his broken spacesuit and laying them out on the ground in an organized pattern. "Both probably," he said, "but that is what humans do, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves, even when it costs us everything." Lyria watched him work and found herself confused by this strange human. He did not boast or brag like warriors usually did, and he did not seem afraid. Even though he was injured and stranded, he simply accepted his situation and started working on whatever task came next. Ashfire moved closer and sniffed at the human, with curiosity replacing his earlier wariness. Moonshadow circled around to get a better view, and her blue scales rippling in the moonlight. "What are you doing?" Lyria asked as she watched Danny sort through components and wiring making repairs. He said, "Simply, if the Crithians are coming in 3 hours, then we have 3 hours to prepare." Lyria repeated. "You think I need your help?" Danny looked up at her with those calm gray eyes. "I think we both need each other," he said. "You have magic and dragons, and I have knowledge of Crithian tactics and technology. Together we might survive, and separately we will definitely die." Lyria wanted to argue, but something in his words rang true. She had fought Crithians before, but never a full war fleet. And this human, despite his broken armor and battered ship, seemed to know exactly what he was doing. "Mine," she said. "What do you need?" Danny worked quickly despite his injuries, and Lyria found herself watching with growing interest as he took apart components from his damaged spacesuit. He removed power cells from the back unit and stripped wiring from the arms and carefully extracted fuel lines from the leg sections. His hands moved with the confidence of someone who had done this kind of work 1,000 times before. "What exactly are you building?" Lyria asked as she leaned against a tree. Her dragons had settled nearby and were also watching the human with curious attention. "Improvised explosives," Danny said without looking up. 3 of them to be exact, and each one powerful enough to bring down that cliff face over there. He pointed toward a rocky outcropping about 200 yards away that overlooked a small valley. Lyria looked at the cliff and then back at Danny with confusion clear on her face. "What good will collapsing a cliff do against 40 battle cruisers?" she asked. "Your little bombs will not even scratch their shields." Danny smiled slightly as he connected 2 power cells together with salvaged wire. "The bombs are not for the ships," he said. "They are for what is hidden under that cliff." Iria straightened up and her hand moved instinctively to her blade. "What is under the cliff?" she demanded. "How do you know about anything on this moon?" Danny finally stopped working and looked at her. "Directly human intelligence has been tracking Crithian movements in this sector for 6 months," he said. "They established a fuel depot under that cliff 3 weeks ago, and it is their main supply point for the entire fleet. Without that depot, their ships cannot maintain operations and they will have to retreat back to their home territory. Lyria felt anger rise in her chest because this was her moon to protect. And she should have known about any enemy installation. How did they build a depot without me noticing? She said. Her voice was tight with frustration and wounded pride. They use stealth technology and civilian mining equipment. Danny explained. From the surface, it looks like a natural cave system, but underneath they have enough fuel to power their fleet for months. Your magical senses probably detected nothing, because they used purely mechanical systems with no energy signatures. Lyria wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Her magic could detect living things and energy fields, but simple machines often slipped past her awareness. She had been so focused on watching for ships and raiders that she never thought to look for something. As mundane as a fuel depot, you should have warned us, she said. Your people should have told the elves about this threat. Danny went back to assembling his explosives with steady hands. We tried, he said. 3 separate messages were sent to the Elven Council, but we received no response. Your people do not always take humans seriously, because we are young and weak compared to the elder races. Lyria felt shame wash through her because she knew this was true. The elves considered themselves superior to most species, and especially to humans who had only been traveling the stars for a few centuries. Many of her people dismissed humans as children, playing with technology they barely understood. She had been guilty of the same prejudice when she first saw Danny stumbling from his wrecked ship. I apologize, she said quietly. We should have listened. Danny shrugged as he sealed the first explosive device. Apologies do not matter right now, he said. Survival matters, and we can worry about politics after we deal. With the Crethians, Lyria found herself respecting this human. Despite his appearance and his low rank, he did not waste time on blame or anger, and he simply focused on the task in front of him. That was the mark of a true warrior, even if he claimed to be just a technician. How much time do we have, she asked. Danny checked a device on his wrist that somehow still functioned, despite the damage to his suit. 2 hours and 17 minutes, he said. Maybe less if they decide to send scouts ahead of the main fleet. Then we should move quickly, Lyria said. She whistled sharply and both dragons rose to their feet with alert attention. Ashfire can carry your explosives and I will scout ahead to make sure the path to the cliff is clear. Danny looked uncertain as he glanced at the massive red dragoner. You sure he will not eat me? He asked. Ashfire snorted and a small puff of smoke escaped his nostrils. Lyria laughed for the first time since the conversation had turned serious. He only eats people who threaten me, she said, and right now you are an ally, so you are safe. Danny carefully packed his 3 explosive devices into a makeshift bag and approached Ashfire with cautious respect. The dragon lowered his head and allowed the human to climb onto his back using the natural ridges of his scales as handholds. Lyria mounted Moonshadow with the fluid grace of long practice, and the 2 dragons took flight. The wind rushed past them as they soared over the forest canopy toward the cliff face. From the air, Lyria could see the crash site growing smaller behind them, and the vast expanse of the forest spreading in all directions. The moon was beautiful at night, with bioluminescent plants creating patterns of light among the trees. It was hard to believe that in just over 2 hours this peaceful place might become a battlefield. They landed near the base of the cliff, and Danny slid down from Ashfire's back with a grunt of pain. His injuries were clearly worse than he was letting on, but he did not complain. Show me exactly where the depot entrance is, Lyria said. Danny pulled out a small scanning device and pointed it at the cliff face. After a moment it beeped, and he indicated a section of rock that looked identical to everything around it. There, he said. Behind that section is a reinforced door that leads to the main depot. It is shielded against most sensors, but physical explosives will work just fine. Lyria examined the rock with her enhanced elven vision and could barely make out the faint outline of something artificial. The Crithians had done excellent work hiding their installation. Where do you want the charges placed? She asked. Danny moved to 3 specific points along the cliff base and marked each one with a small piece of reflective tape here, and here, he said. When they detonate simultaneously, the entire cliff will collapse inward and crush the depot. The fuel inside will ignite, and the explosion will be visible from orbit. That should get the attention of the Crithian fleet. Lyria observed. Danny smiled grimly as he began setting the first charge. That is the idea, he said. When they see their supply depot destroyed, they will have two choices. They can retreat and give up this offensive, or they can land ground forces to investigate and secure whatever is left. And you want them to land, Lyria said with sudden understanding. Because fighting on the ground gives us better odds than fighting in space. Exactly. Danny said. In space, they have shields and superior firepower, and we would be destroyed in seconds. On the ground, your magic and your dragons become significant advantages. Lyria watched him work and realized that this human was much more than a simple technician. He thought like a strategist and planned, like a commander, and moved with the efficiency of someone who had survived many battles. Who are you, really? She asked. Danny paused in his work and looked at her. I told you the truth. He said, I am a maintenance technician named Danny Carter. I fix ships and repair equipment and try to keep people alive. But you fight like a soldier. Lyria pressed, and you plan like a general. Danny returned to setting the charge. Every human learns to fight, he said. When you are the weakest species in the galaxy, you either learn to survive or you die. I have done a lot of surviving. He finished placing all 3 charges and activated a remote detonator. Now we wait, he said. The Crithians should arrive in about 90 minutes, and when they do, we trigger the charges. What happens after that? Lyria asked. Danny checked his wrist device again and frowned. After that we improvise, he said. I have a rough plan, but battles never go according to plan. The best we can do is stay flexible and keep adapting. Lyria sat down on a fallen log, and her dragon settled on either side of her. She found herself thinking about how wrong her first impression of this human had been. She had seen broken armor and assumed a broken warrior. But Danny was anything but broken. He was scarred and battered and pushed to his limits, but he kept going. That was something Lyria understood and respected. The minutes ticked by slowly as they waited in the darkness. Above them, the stars slowly wheeled across the sky. Somewhere up there, a Crithian war fleet was approaching with destruction in mind, and down here an elf and a human prepared to make their stand. Lyria glanced at Danny, who was cleaning his wounds more thoroughly now that they had time. Why did you really volunteer for this mission? She asked. He could have lied or given her a noble speech, but instead he just shrugged. Someone had to, he said simply, and I was available. The first indication that the Crithians had arrived came not from Danny's sensors, but from Moonshadow. The blue dragon suddenly raised her head and growled low in her throat, while her scales rippled with tension. Lyria was on her feet instantly with her hand on her blade and her senses extending outward. She could feel it now too, and a disturbance in the natural flow of magic around the moon. Something large and unnatural had entered the atmosphere. Danny looked at his wrist device and nodded. They are here, he said. 47 ships in total, and more than I expected. They are taking up positions in orbit right now. How long until they notice the depot? Lyria asked. Danny studied the display. They should be running standard checks on all their ground installations, and I give it maybe 10 minutes before they scan this location. When they do, they will see that everything appears normal because the depot shielding is still active. Then we blow it, Lyria said. Not yet, Danny replied. We wait until they commit ground forces, and if we destroy it while they are still in orbit, they might just bombard the moon from space. We need them on the ground where your dragons can fight them. Lyria wanted to argue because waiting went against every warrior instinct she had, but she could see the logic in his strategy, even if she did not like it. Above them, the sky began to glow as Crithian ships descended through the atmosphere. They were massive vessels with angular hulls covered in weapons arrays and troop deployment bays. Lyria counted 12 ships breaking formation and heading toward the surface. The others remained in orbit as a protective screen. They are landing, she said. Danny watched the ships approach with those calm gray eyes that seemed to see more than they should. Wait, he said. Let them deploy their troops first. The 12 ships landed in a rough circle around the area where the depot was hidden. Massive ramps extended and Crithian warriors began pouring out by the hundreds. They were large reptilian creatures that stood over 7 feet tall with armored scales and weapons that crackled with energy. Lyria had fought Crithians before, but never in these numbers. She felt her heart begin to race with the anticipation of battle. Ashfire and Moonshadow both growled, and smoke leaked from Ashfire's nostrils as he prepared his fire. Easy, Lyria whispered to her dragons. Wait for the signal. Danny watched the deployment with intense focus and counting under his breath. When the last of the warriors had disembarked and the ships began to lift off again, he pressed the detonator. The 3 charges exploded, simultaneously with a sound like thunder. The cliff face shattered and collapsed inward with a roar that shook the ground. For a moment there was silence as dust and debris filled the air, then the fuel depot ignited. The explosion was massive and far larger than Lyria had expected. A pillar of flame shot hundreds of feet into the sky, and the shockwave threw Crithian warriors like toys. Secondary explosions followed as stored munitions cooked off in the heat. The 12 ships that had just lifted off were caught in the blast, and 3 of them crashed immediately. The others struggled to gain altitude with their hulls scorched and damaged. Lyria stared at the destruction with her mouth open. You said they were bombs, she said. Those were small nuclear devices. Danny shrugged as he grabbed a piece of twisted metal from his crashed ship. I said they were improvised explosives, he corrected. I never specified what kind. The Crithians were in chaos now, with their command structure broken and their supply depot destroyed. But they were not defeated, and warriors began organizing into defensive formations. Lyria could see officers shouting orders and trying to restore order to the scattered troops. Now we fight, Danny said. He activated something on his wrist device and spoke into it quickly. This is Carter, and Beacon is active and requesting immediate support. Who are you talking to? Lyria demanded. Back up, Danny said. I told you humans do not fight alone. Lyria felt anger flash through her again because this human kept surprising her with information he had not shared. You have ships in range, she asked. Why did you not call them before? Because they were protecting the civilian transports. Danny explained, Transports needed time to get clear of Crithian sensor range, and now they are safe and my people can come help. 3 human ships dropped from orbit with speed that shocked Lyria. They were smaller than the Crithian vessels, but they moved with incredible agility. Weapons fire lanced down and struck Crithian positions with precision. But the Crithians had orbital support of their own, and return fire began hammering the human ships. It is time, Lyria said. She mounted Moonshadow and drew her enchanted blade. The sword began to glow with blue light as she channeled magic through it. Ashfire spread his wings and roared a challenge that echoed across the battlefield. Together, the elf and her dragons launched themselves at the Crithian forces. Lyria had fought in many battles over her 3 centuries of life. She had faced pirates and raiders and hostile creatures from a dozen different worlds, but she had never fought alongside a human before. Danny moved through the chaos with a piece of sharp metal in one hand and a salvaged Crithian weapon in the other. He did not have magic or superior strength or any of the advantages that Lyria took for granted, but he fought with a brutal efficiency that came from years of barely surviving. He used cover and terrain to his advantage and struck from unexpected angles. When a Crithian warrior charged him with a powered blade, he rolled under the strike and came up inside the creature's guard. The piece of metal found the gap in the Crithian's armor and the warrior went down. Another Crithian fired an energy weapon at Danny, but he was already moving. He grabbed a fallen shield and used it to deflect the shot back at the shooter. Lyria found herself fighting near him, and her blade cutting through Crithian armor with ease. Magic enhanced her speed and strength and made her a whirlwind of destruction. Moonshadow moved like living shadow and appearing behind enemies and tearing them apart with claws and teeth. Ashfire rained fire from above and turned entire groups of Crithians into ash, but there were so many enemies and they kept coming. For every warrior they killed, 2 more seemed to take their place. Lyria felt her magic beginning to drain as she pushed herself harder. Crithian officers spotted her and recognized her as a priority target. It directed a squad of elite warriors toward her position. Lyria braced herself for the assault, but Danny appeared at her side. He had somehow acquired a Crithian plasma rifle, and he fired with remarkable accuracy. 3 of the elite warriors went down before they could close the distance. The others tried to flank, but Moonshadow intercepted them. Danny tossed the empty rifle aside and grabbed another weapon from a fallen Crithian. "How are you still fighting?" Lyria asked. "You should be dead from your injuries by now." "Stubbornness mostly," Danny replied, "and a lot of practice at not dying when I probably should." An explosion nearby threw them both to the ground. Lyria's ears rang and her vision blurred for a moment. When it cleared, she saw a massive Crithian commander approaching with a weapon that glowed with deadly power. The commander was easily 9 feet tall with battle scars covering its scales. It wore armor that looked ancient and possibly ceremonialless. One was a veteran and a dangerous opponent. Lyria struggled to her feet and raised her blade. Her magic flared, but she could feel how depleted her reserves had become. She might have enough power for one good strike, but after that she would be fighting, on skill alone. The Crithian commander spoke in its harsh guttural language. Lyria understood enough to know it was challenging her to single combat. That was the Crithian way, and their commanders always sought worthy opponents. She stepped forward to mud, but Danny grabbed her arm. "No," he said. "You are exhausted and that thing will kill you. I can handle it." Lyria said with pride, stiffening her voice. "I have fought Crithian commanders before. Not like this one." Danny said, "Look at its armor, and those are kill markers, and it has hundreds of them." Lyria looked more closely and realized he was right. The marks covered the commander's chest plate, and each one representing a defeated opponent. This was not just a commander, but a legendary warrior. "Then, what do you suggest?" Lyria asked. Danny looked at the commander and then at Ashfire, who was circling overhead. "Can your dragon carry something heavy?" he asked. "Yes, but why?" "Because I have an idea," Danny said. "It is stupid and will probably kill me, but it might work." Before Lyria could stop him, Danny whistled sharply at Ashfire. The red dragon dove toward them, and Danny grabbed onto his leg as he passed. Ashfire carried Danny upward with powerful beats of his wings. The Crithian commander watched with confusion as the human was lifted into the sky. Then Danny did something completely insane. He let go. For a moment he fell freely toward the commander, who raised its weapon to fire. But Danny was not falling randomly, and he was aiming. He crashed into the commander with all the force of a falling object. The impact drove both of them to the ground. Before the commander could recover, Danny had grabbed one of his remaining power cells. He jammed it into the gap in the commander's armor and triggered the overload. The explosion was smaller than the ones that destroyed the depot, but at point-blank range it was more than enough. When the smoke cleared, the Crithian commander was dead, and somehow impossibly Danny was still alive. He lay on the ground, not moving but breathing. Lyria ran to him and checked his injuries. He had new burns and broken ribs and probably a concussion, but he was alive. "You are insane," she said. "That was the stupidest thing I have ever seen." Danny coughed and blood flecked his lips. "Did it work?" he asked. "The commander is dead," Lyria confirmed. "Then it was not stupid," Danny said, "just effective." The death of their commander broke something in the Crithian forces. Lyria had seen this happen before when she fought their kind, and they valued strength above all else. When their strongest warrior fell, the others began to question their own chances of survival. The remaining Crithians started to pull back toward their damaged ships. Some tried to organize a fighting retreat, while others simply ran. The human ships overhead pressed their advantage and struck at the Crithian vessels with renewed intensity. 2 more enemy ships exploded in the sky and rained burning debris across the battlefield. Lyria knelt beside Danny and placed her hands on his chest. She channeled what little magic she had left into healing energy. It was not much, but it would keep him stable until proper medical help arrived. "You do not have to do that," Danny said weakly. "Save your strength for fighting." "The fighting is over," Lyria replied, "and you saved my life, so now I save yours. That is how it works." Danny smiled. "Despite the pain, I thought elves did not care about humans," he said. "We are supposed to be beneath your notice." Lyria felt shame again, because that was exactly what she had thought just hours ago. "I was wrong about your people," she admitted, "and I was especially wrong about you." She looked at his face, which was covered in blood and dirt, and new scars that would join the old ones. "You are not weak," she said. "You are one of the strongest warriors I have ever met. Danny laughed and then winced because laughing hurt his broken ribs. I am not a warrior, he insisted. I just know how to survive, and sometimes survival looks like courage. Around them, the battlefield grew quiet as the last Crithians either surrendered or fled. The human ships landed and medics rushed out to help the wounded. Lyria watched as they worked with quick efficiency and treating injuries with technology. She did not fully understand. One of the medics approached her and Danny. He was an older human with gray hair and kind eyes. His uniform identified him as a doctor, ma'am. I need to take Carter for treatment. The doctor said. He has multiple fractures and internal bleeding and possible organ damage. He needs surgery immediately. Lyria nodded and stepped back to let them work. They lifted Danny onto a floating stretcher, and he looked up at her as they prepared to move him. Your dragons are good friends, he said. Take care of them. They are. Not my friends, Lyria replied. They are my family, and you are now our friend. So you will not die today. The medics carried Danny toward one of the human ships. Lyria watched them go and felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize the feeling as worry. In 3 centuries she had seen countless warriors wounded or killed. But somehow this human maintenance technician had gotten under her defenses. She realized she actually cared whether he survived. Ashfire landed beside her and nuzzled her gently with his massive head. Moonshadow appeared from the shadows and pressed against her other side. Her dragons could sense her emotional turmoil and offered their comfort. Thank you both, Lyria whispered. We did well today. A human officer approached and saluted respectfully. He wore the uniform of a ship captain with the name Rodriguez on his chest. Ma'am, I am Captain Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Fleet, he said. I wanted to thank you for your assistance today. Without you and your dragons, we would have lost many more people. Lyria returned the salute in the elven manner. I should thank you as well, she said. Your technician Danny Carter saved this moon and possibly this entire sector. He is an impressive warrior. Rodriguez smiled slightly. Carter is not officially a warrior. He said he is listed as maintenance crew, but he has seen more combat than most of our soldiers. The man has a talent for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place, Lyria corrected. He was exactly where he needed to be today. The captain nodded in agreement. Will you allow our doctors to examine you as well? He asked. You appear to be injured, and our medical technology might help. Lyria looked down at herself and realized she was covered in cuts and burns. Her armor was damaged in several places, and she had lost track of when or how she received most of the wounds. Her magic was nearly depleted, which meant her natural healing would be slow. I would appreciate that, she said. Rodriguez gestured, and another medic came over to scan Lyria with a handheld device. While they worked, the captain continued talking. We received a message from the Elven Council, he said. They want to speak with you about what happened here today. Lyria felt her stomach tighten because she could guess what that conversation would involve. She had acted without orders and fought alongside humans and allowed a human to devise the battle strategy. Some members of the council would not approve of any of those things. I will speak with them, Lyria said. But first, I want to know if Danny will survive. Rodriguez checked a device on his wrist. The doctors say he will make a full recovery. He reported he has survived worse apparently, and this is not even in his top 10 worst injuries. How is that possible? Lyria asked. He is human, and you are supposed to be fragile. The captain laughed. Individual, humans are fragile. He agreed. But we are also stubborn, and we refuse to die when we are supposed to. It is both our greatest weakness and our greatest strength. The medic finished scanning Lyria and administered something that made her wounds stop hurting. You should rest, he advised. Your magical reserves are dangerously low and you need time to recover. I will rest when I know my friend is safe, Lyria said. The medic looked at Rodriguez, who nodded. Take her to the medical bay, he ordered. She can wait there while Carter is in surgery. Lyria followed the medic onto the human ship with her dragons trailing behind. The interior was very different from elven vessels with metal corridors and bright artificial lights. Everything was functional and efficient with no decoration or beauty, but it felt solid and reliable, much like the humans themselves. They arrived at the medical bay, which was filled with wounded soldiers receiving treatment. Lyria saw humans and several other species, all being cared for by the busy medical staff. No one was turned away regardless of their race or allegiance. Even captured Crithians were receiving medical attention. That surprised Lyria because most species did not treat enemy wounded. "You care for your prisoners?" she asked. "The medic, of course," he replied. "They are defeated and wounded, and that makes them patients, not enemies. Our medical oath requires us to help anyone who needs it." Lyria thought about that as she sat down to wait. Humans were strange in so many ways. They were weak compared to most species, but they refused to give up. They had no magic, but they created incredible technology. They were young, but they fought with the wisdom of ancient races. And apparently, they treated even their enemies with compassion. A young human soldier approached Lyria, nervously. He could not have been more than 20 years old. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said. "I wanted to thank you for what you did today. You and your dragon saved a lot of lives, including mine." Lyria studied the young soldier and saw the same determination in his eyes that she had seen in Danny. "What is your name?" she asked. "Private Tyler Lewis, ma'am," he said. "I am a communications technician." "Another technician." Lyria said, "Your people seem to have very capable technicians." Lewis smiled. "We have to be capable, ma'am," he said. "When you are outmatched in every other way, you learn to make the most of what you have. That seems to be the human philosophy." Lyria observed. Lewis nodded seriously. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "We cannot compete with elven magic or Crithian strength, or any of the advantages other species have, so we compete with determination and creativity, and refusing to quit. Those are good qualities." Lyria said. Lewis saluted and returned to his duties. Lyria leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. Ashfire and moonshadow settled on either side of her, providing warmth and comfort. She thought about everything that had happened since Danny crashed on her moon. She had mocked his broken spacesuit and assumed he was weak. She had dismissed his warnings and underestimated his abilities. She had been wrong about everything, but more importantly, she had learned something valuable today. Strength came in many forms. It was not just about magic or size or natural advantages. Sometimes strength was about knowing your weaknesses and working around them. Sometimes strength was about sacrificing yourself so others could live. Sometimes strength was about being a maintenance technician who fought like a warrior when circumstances demanded it. Hours passed before a doctor finally emerged from the surgical bay. He looked tired but satisfied. Lyria stood up immediately. "How is he?" she asked. The doctor smiled. "Carter is stable and sleeping," he said. "He will need several weeks of recovery, but he should make a full return." "To duty, can I see him?" Lyria asked. The doctor hesitated. "He needs rest," he said. "Perhaps you could visit tomorrow." Lyria fixed him with a look that she usually reserved for pirates who ignored her warnings. "I would like to see him now," she said quietly. Her tone made it clear this was not really a request. The doctor sighed and nodded. "Follow me," he said. "But please do not disturb him if he is sleeping." The recovery room was quiet and dimly lit, with only the soft beeping of medical monitors breaking the silence. Danny lay on a bed surrounded by machines that Lyria did not understand, but which apparently were keeping him alive. His chest rose and fell with steady breathing, and most of his wounds had been cleaned and bandaged. He looked younger while sleeping and less like the warrior he had proven himself to be. Lyria pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. Ashfire and Moonshadow could not fit in the small room, so they waited outside in the corridor. She reached out and gently touched Danny's hand, which was wrapped in clean bandages. "You are a strange human." "Danny Carter," she said softly. "You made me question everything." "I thought I knew." Danny's eyes opened slowly, and he looked at her with confusion for a moment before recognition set in. "Did we win?" he asked. His voice was rough and weak. "Yes," Lyria said. "We won, and the Crithians have retreated. And this sector is safe." "Good," Danny said. He tried to sit up, but pain made him stop immediately. "Easy," Lyria said. "The doctor says you need weeks to heal properly." Danny settled back against the pillows with a frustrated sigh. Weeks, he repeated. I do not have weeks, and there is too much work to do. The work can wait, Lyria said firmly. Right now you need to rest and heal and let others handle things. That is not how I operate. Danny protested. I'm supposed to be fixing things, not lying in a bed. You fixed plenty today, Lyria reminded him. You saved an entire moon and destroyed a Crithian supply depot and killed their commander. I would say that counts as a productive day. Danny smiled slightly despite his pain. I suppose when you put it that way, he said, but I still feel useless just lying here. Lyria leaned forward and looked at him seriously. You are not useless, she said. You are recovering, and there is a difference. Even warriors need time to heal after battle. Danny studied her face for a long moment. You called me a warrior, he observed. Earlier, you said I was weak and pathetic. I was wrong, Lyria admitted, and I am sorry for judging you so harshly. You proved today that strength has nothing to do with perfect armor or unbroken ships. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who keep fighting even when everything is falling apart. Danny looked surprised by her words. That might be the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me, he said. Most people still see me as just a tech who got lucky a few times. You are much more than that, Lyria said, and I hope you know that now. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes while Danny's eyes began to close again. The medication was pulling him back toward sleep. Before he drifted off completely, he spoke again. Your dragons are incredible, he mumbled, especially the way they trusted me. Even though I am human, they trusted you because I trust you, Lyria said. Dragons can sense things that others cannot, and they saw your true nature before I did. That makes them smarter than me, Danny said with a weak laugh. Much smarter, Lyria agreed. Danny's breathing deepened, and he fell asleep again. Lyria sat with him for a while longer, just watching to make sure he was truly stable. She thought about how much had changed in just one day. This morning she had been a proud elf warrior who looked down on humans as weak and inferior. Now she sat beside a human friend who had earned her respect and admiration through courage and sacrifice. The door opened quietly, and Captain Rodriguez entered. Hope I am not interrupting, he said softly. Lyria shook her head and stood up. No, I was just making sure he was all right, she said. Rodriguez nodded and approached the bed to check the monitors. He is doing well, he said. Better than expected, actually. But Carter has a habit of defying medical predictions. He is stubborn, Lyria observed. That, he is, Rodriguez agreed. It is one of his most useful and most annoying qualities. The captain looked at Lyria with curiosity. If you do not mind me asking, he said, what changed your opinion of humans today? I saw what you really are, Lyria replied. Not the weakness I expected, but the strength I did not know existed, Rodriguez smiled. That is high praise coming from an elf, he said. Your people are not known for admitting when they are wrong. I am trying to be better, Lyria said. Danny taught me that admitting mistakes is not weakness but wisdom. The captain gestured toward the door. Walk with me, he said. There is something I want to show you. Lyria followed Rodriguez out of the recovery room and through the ship's corridors. They passed crew members who nodded respectfully as they walked. Eventually they reached an observation deck with large windows that looked out over the forest. Moon from here, Lyria could see the battlefield where they had fought. Work crews were already clearing debris and helping. The wounded human and elven ships now shared the same space, working together on recovery efforts. This is what I wanted you to see, Rodriguez said. Two species that barely knew each other, working side by side because one human and one elf chose to trust each other. Lyria watched the cooperation below and felt pride mixed with hope. Do you think this could continue? She asked. Could our peoples truly work together? Rodriguez considered the question carefully. I think today proved it is possible, he said. But it will take more people like you and Carter who are willing to look past old prejudices. It will take courage and patience and willingness to learn from each other. I want to try, Lyria said. I want to learn more about humans and your ways. And I want my people to see what I have seen today. That would be welcome, Rodriguez said. Perhaps you could start by serving as a liaison between our species. Your experience today gives you unique insight into how we can work together. Lyria thought about the Elven Council and how they would react to such a proposal. Some would oppose it, but others might see the wisdom in building stronger ties with humanity. I will speak to my council, she said, and I will argue for closer cooperation between our peoples. Rodriguez extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. Lyria had seen this before but had never participated. She took his hand, and they shook. Thank you for your help today, Rodriguez said, and thank you for giving Carter a chance to prove himself. He is a good man who deserves to be recognized for more than just his technical skills. He will be, Lyria promised. I will make sure of it. Over the next few days, Lyria remained on the human ship while Danny recovered. She spent time learning about human culture, and technology and philosophy. The more she learned, the more she came to respect these remarkable people. They had created an entire civilization in just a few thousand years. They had overcome countless obstacles through ingenuity and determination. They had developed technology that rivaled magic in many ways. And most importantly, they had learned to work together despite their differences. Humans came in countless varieties with different appearances and beliefs and customs, yet they had mostly learned to cooperate and build something greater than any individual could achieve alone. That was a lesson the elves could benefit from learning. On the third day, Danny was finally cleared to leave the medical bay. He still moved carefully, and his ribs were taped and he would need more time to fully heal, but he was mobile and alert and eager to return to work. Lyria met him in the corridor with Ashfire and Moonshadow. The dragons greeted Danny with gentle nudges, and Ashfire made a sound that was almost like purring. I see they missed you, Lyria said. Danny scratched Ashfire behind the horns. I missed them too, he admitted. Your dragons are better company than most humans I know. They certainly have better judgment, Lyria teased. They liked you before I did, Danny laughed and then winced because his ribs still hurt. Fair point, he said. So what happens now? Now we go speak to my council. Lyria said, I have been summoned to explain my actions and you are coming with me. Danny looked nervous. Are you sure that is a good idea? He asked. I am not exactly popular with the elven leadership. That is about to change. Lyria said firmly, you saved one of our moons and proved that humans are worthy allies. The council needs to hear that directly from both of us. They walked together toward the shuttle bay where a ship waited to take them to the elven homeworld. As they walked, Lyria thought about the journey ahead. It would not be easy to change centuries of prejudice and mistrust. But Danny had taught her that difficult tasks were worth attempting. He had faced impossible odds with broken equipment and won through determination and creativity. If he could do that, then she could certainly face a council meeting. Besides, she would not be alone. She had her dragons and her new human friend and the proof of what they had accomplished together. That would have to be enough. Danny paused at the shuttle entrance and looked back at the human ship. Thank you for this, he said to Lyria, for what she asked, for seeing past the broken spacesuit. Danny said, for giving me a chance to prove that humans are more than we appear. Lyria smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. Thank you for teaching me to look deeper, she replied, for showing me that true strength comes from the heart, not from magic or technology. Together they boarded the shuttle with two dragons following close behind. As the ship lifted off, Lyria looked down at the forest moon, where everything had changed. Just days ago, she had mocked a human with broken armor. That same human was her friend and ally and teacher. She had learned that prejudice was a weakness that blinded people to potential allies. She had learned that cooperation was stronger than pride. Most importantly, she had learned that sometimes the greatest warriors were the ones who never wanted to fight. They were the ones who fought anyway because someone had to, and that made all the difference. The shuttle accelerated toward the stars, carrying an elf and a human toward an uncertain future. But Lyria was not afraid. She had faced a Crithian warfleet and won. She could face anything as long as she remembered the lessons Danny had taught her. Never judge by appearances, never underestimate determination, and never give up even when everything seems impossible. Those were human virtues, and Lyria intended to make them elven virtues as well.